The Kingdom of Crystal sounds like something out of a bad Indiana Jones movie, but it's actually a region of Sweden. Ever since the 1700s, there's been a huge glass industry in the south of Sweden, in the province of Småland. Glass production here started in a humble manner, making common household glassware, but things changed over time. These days, glassware from Kosta, Boda and Orrefors is famous worldwide, and there are many magnificent glass artists from this area. Let me give you a tour of the Kingdom of Crystal and also show why you might want to give it a visit if you're in Sweden. My journey will take me through the heart of the Kingdom of Crystal. I'll visit Bergdala Hyttsill and Målerås glassworks, as well as the glass factory and art glass studio. I'll also visit some towns that used to have glassworks, but the workshops have shut down, so they're just remnants of former glory. And I'll try to blow some glass myself in Kosta, the oldest glass manufacturer in Småland. But first of all, let's talk a bit about history. Glassmaking seems simple at first glance. You take sand, soda and lime, you heat it up, and then you shape stuff from it. How difficult can it possibly be? Well, apparently it's not as easy as it sounds, and it was a well-preserved secret for many centuries. Venice was famous for its Murano glass in the Middle Ages, and the Venetian glassmakers tried to keep their secrets hidden from the outside world. But the craft of glassmaking spread throughout Europe, to Germany for example, and to Sweden in the 1500s. King Gustav Vasa recruited Italian and German glassmakers to Sweden, but glassmaking was tightly controlled. Glassware was a luxury, and no one could open a glassworks without the king's permission. But in the 1700s, two generals called Anders Koskull and Stael von Holstein served under King Carl XII at the Battle of Narva. As a reward for their battle prowess, they were made governors of Kronoberg and Kalmar, which are both in the province of Småland. They pooled all their money together and had a chat with the king, and in the year 1742 they were given the privilege to open a glassworks in Småland. They named that glass factory Kosta as a combination of the two first letters of each of their names, Koskull and Stael. At first they produced simple glassware for household use, but things changed in the 1800s. Glassmaking technology took giant leaps forward, and there was a greater interest in art glass as well. Many new glassworks opened up, and most of them were located in the province of Småland. That was when the Kingdom of Crystal was born. The Kingdom of Crystal sounds pretty pretentious, and that's because it is. In Swedish, the name is Glasriket, the Glass Realm. But marketing people have been trying to push the name Kingdom of Crystal in English. I guess it sounds a bit more impressive. In the 1700s and 1800s, glassmaking was big business, and the glassworks of Småland employed tons of people. There was a whole industry surrounding the glass production. Before the glass industry, there was a lot of iron being produced in Småland. Not from mining, but by extracting it from lakes. Bog iron is a rudimentary form of iron ore that can be found in bogs and swamps, and in lakes in Småland. That meant that there were already ironworks in place and that mill towns were common. It turned out to be relatively simple to convert an iron mill town to a glass mill town. But glass was a different type of industry than iron, and it required artisans and craftsmen as well. And Sweden did its best to attract that type of talent to the Kingdom of Crystal. During the 1800s, many of the glassmaking companies in Småland shifted from household glass to art glass instead. And that paid off later in the 1900s, when Kosta and Orrefors in particular became famous worldwide for their designs. There were still many other glass companies in the area, but most of them focused on glassware for domestic use. Kosta and Orrefors and a couple of others set their sights on international export as well. And that's actually when the term Glasriket was coined. So when I've been talking about the Kingdom of Crystal, it wasn't actually a term that was used before the 1900s. Back in the 17 and 1800s, there were actually more glass factories than today, but it was an industry and they weren't trying to promote it with a catchy name. There's been more than 100 different glassworks in Småland, but these days only 13 of them remain. And it's almost all art glass these days, or at least mostly art glass. Some of these active glassworks include Bergdala, Erikshyttan, Skruvs glasbruk, and Målerås glasbruk. But the oldest of them all is Kosta, that was founded in 1742. So let's have a look at this place in particular. Kosta is the name of a town and also the name of the glassworks. But there's also a lot more. There's an art hotel, a spa, restaurants, a glass shop, and lots of other activities for visiting tourists. And Kosta is actually part of Kosta Boda. In 1990, Kosta, Boda and Orrefors joined together with 4 other glass manufacturers into a huge glass production group. This is one of the biggest and most famous destinations in the Kingdom of Crystal. Tons of people visit to look at exquisite glass designs and artworks, and some actually try to blow some glass themselves. And that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Technically, this isn't my first time blowing glass, but my first and only time before this was almost 40 years ago. So I have no idea what I'm doing, but I am gonna try to make a beer glass for myself. That was a lot of fun, but I'm not exactly gonna quit my day job and become a glassblower anytime soon. Another popular glass studio is Bergdala that's been active since 1889. They're famous for their blue line set of glassware. It lies between Växjö and Kosta, and since Växjö is the biggest city in the area, it's pretty easy to swing by if you're in the neighborhood. Aside from looking at glass, there's also a cafe here in the summers, and you can also look at glass artisans producing their wares. The village of Skruv used to have a brewery, but it doesn't anymore. It doesn't really have much at all, to be honest. But it does have a glassworks. It's not the biggest one you'll find in the Kingdom of Crystal, but the name Skruv used to be quite famous. And fun fact, I actually lived in Skruv for 1 year as a kid. It's not a big place. Målerås is another glass producer that's famous for its bold designs and for mixing glass with iron. Målerås used to be a small town as well, but the population has been dwindling every year. The glassworks opened in 1890, and it was a decently sized town back then. But in 1960, there lived 512 people here. And in 2015, that number had dropped to 192. But people still visit the glass manufacturer, and just like at Kosta, you can also try to blow your own glass here. And they also serve something called Hyttsill, that basically means furnace herring, but I think that I need to elaborate a bit on that. Hyttsill used to be a time when the glassworks workers ate a bit and had a nice and pleasant time after work. They warmed up their food on the furnaces, and then they sat around in the workshop and talked and ate. It was also a time when hunters and other workmen and stray vagabonds gathered to chat and have a bite to eat. And that tradition still lingers on today. Sort of. No one invites homeless people to Hyttsill any longer. It's well organized, and it consists of herring and potatoes, sausages and cheesecake. Basically traditional food in Småland. And it's not really my cup of tea, to be honest. I'm not fond of herring, so I'm gonna skip that one. Instead, let's move on to the glass factory. The glass factory can be found in Boda, and it's both a glass museum and a glass workshop. It's intended to be a creative meeting point for artists, designers, and visitors. It's Sweden's only glass museum, according to themselves, and 40,000 different pieces of glassware can be found here. They also put on glass shows and events, and they cater to an international audience. The cost of visiting the glass factory is 100 Swedish kronor, so it's quite affordable. Aside from this museum, most glass workshops are free to have a look at, but if you wanna blow your own glass or engage in Hyttsill, then you have to pay for it. Yeah, and of course, if you wanna buy some glass as well, yeah, you have to pay for that. If you wanna visit the Kingdom of Crystal or Glasriket, then my recommendation is that you come by car. Everything is pretty close, but public transportation isn't exactly plentiful in rural Sweden. Rent a car in Växjö or Kalmar and spend a day or two exploring the Glass Realm. It's a lovely way to get a deeper understanding for Swedish history, and I think that everyone loves glass. Oh, and while you're at it, you might also want to explore the emigration when 1 million Swedes left the country for America. Many of those people came from this region of Småland, so there's a lot to explore in these Swedish woods. And that's about it. That was a visit to the Kingdom of Crystal in Sweden. I hope you found it interesting. Like and subscribe, but most importantly, have a great day.